Hi guys, welcome to another tutorial. So today I will be teaching you guys how you guys can create your own calculator using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let's get started. So I would recommend that you guys just create a folder for this project. I call it calculator, and you guys have a code editor open. I'm using Visual Studio Code, and let's get started. So we need to make an HTML file. I'll just call it index.html. Then we need to make a JavaScript file, which I can call script.js, and we need to make a CSS file, which I'll call style.css. Now let's just get our HTML file set up. So let's add all of the basic tags that we need. So we need the head tag and we need the body tag. Now let's go ahead and actually link our other files into our HTML file. So to link the CSS file, we use the link tag. Then we need to say rel is equal to style sheet, and we give it the path of our file. And then lastly, we can link our JavaScript file at the bottom of our body tag using the script tag. We give it a source and we link our JavaScript file. So now we have our all our files linked. So let me go ahead and actually open my HTML file. And here it is. So today I will be showing you guys how to create a calculator that looks like this. So it's a very basic calculator, and I will be showing you guys how to actually make it work. So the first thing that we will need to do is just change the background color of our entire screen, and that's pretty easy to do. We can just go to styles and apply a style to our body. So I'll give it a style for its background color. Background color. And I can just give it an RGB color for now, and then hover and select a greenish color. I think that looks about right. If I reload my screen, I think that looks pretty good. Now we need to make a div for the blue-ish background, so let's go ahead and do that. So I will be making a div in my body, and I'll just give it an ID of maybe blue outline, and then I can go ahead and style it. So since I gave it an ID, I have to use the hashtag, and I can call it blue outline, and I can go ahead and style it. Oops, I need to give it the curly braces. There we have it. Yep, there we have it. Now all I have to do is just change the background color first of all. So background color, I can give it an RGB color again, and I can change it to like a bluish color. I think that looks about right. Now I need to give it a height, of course. So I'm thinking a height of around maybe 150 pixels, and a width of maybe 1200 pixels. So if I reload my screen, that is not right. I need to give it a much larger height, so maybe 600 pixels. I think that isn't as high as I'd like. Maybe 700 pixels. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And now we just need to make it a bit more thin, so maybe 800 pixels. I think that looks pretty good. So let's just move it to the center a bit, so we can give it like a margin top. Maybe maybe I want to give it a margin top of like 10% of the entire screen. That's too much. Maybe 2% should work. I think I can do a bit more. Maybe 2.5%. I think that looks good. Now let's move it to the center. So we need to give it a margin left of maybe 30%. I think that's a bit too much. Maybe 25%. I think we need to move it a bit more left. I think that looks good. So what we have now is like our basic blue outline and our green background here. Let me change the blue a bit actually. It doesn't quite look similar. Okay, I think that looks a bit better. So now what we need is that we need like an input box here. So what I'm gonna actually go ahead and do is create two different divs. So I'll have one div for the top and then one div for the rest of these. So let me go ahead and do that. So Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. So I can make 2 divs here inside my blue outline. I can give the first one an ID of top, give the second one an ID of bottom, and I can just style the 2. So first, I think I should be able to use flex here, so I can give it a display of flex, and I want the flex direction to be that of a column. So flex direction column. Then I can style the 2. So all I need to really do right now, oops, that should work. All I need to do is give it a background color for now. I'll just give it a background color that differentiates the 2. So I can copy paste this, change this to bottom, and change the background color. And I need to give it flex 1 and flex 1. So if I reload my screen, you guys can see that I've divided equally, but I don't want it to be equal. I want my top part to be much smaller. So maybe I can give it a flex of 0.3. I think a bit bigger maybe, so maybe 0.4. I think that looks good. Now what we need to do is add an input box to it. Oops. So let me go ahead and do that. So I can go to my top div and add an input box. Input type should be text. Let me give it like an ID of INP. So let's just see what we get here. We get an input box here, so we have to go ahead and style it. So I can style it using its ID. So let's go ahead and do that. I don't want to change the background color or anything. I don't want it to. I can't really use flexbox since I want it to be a bit down. So let me just give it like a margin top first. So maybe margin top is about 10%. How does that look? I think that's a bit too much. Maybe around 5%. I think that looks good. Now let's give it a margin. Let's give it a height first. Let's just increase the height. So maybe 100 pixels. I think that looks pretty good. Let's just increase it a bit. Maybe 200 pixels. Oops, that's a bit too much. I think 150 should do the job. I think that looks good. Let's just move it a bit higher. I think that looks good. And now let's move it. Let's give it a width first of all. So maybe a width of 400 pixels, or is that too much? I think that looks good. Now let's give it a margin left. Margin left, maybe 35%. It's too much, clearly, so maybe 25%. We can still move it a bit more to the left. I think that looks good. I think we should increase the width a bit, maybe 600 pixels. And now we can just move it to the left. So maybe 12.5%. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So we have our input box here. Let me just go ahead and remove the background color now. I don't really need that. I can just remove it. So that looks pretty good, I'd say. Now all we have to do is go ahead and create all of our buttons. So to do that, I think the best option is will probably be to create use four different rows. So this can be one, that can be one, that can be one, and that can be one. So let me go ahead and do that in the bottom one. So I have to make a display of flex. Then I need to give it a flex direction. I can use rows or columns, but I think I'll just use columns. And now I need to actually go ahead and add the 4 different divs I was talking about. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me go to my bottom div, add 4 divs. 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks good, and we can just give them a common class. Maybe B div, so bottom div, class B div, and the last one. class bdiv. Now we can go ahead and style it. So we just have to go here. We have to use a dot since we made a class. Dot bdiv, and now let's give it a flex first of all of 1. Let's give it maybe a background color of blue. Right now they'll all just be merged together, but let's see. Yeah, so we actually have to give it different IDs. Let's just give it different IDs. bdiv, then bdiv2, bdiv3, and bdiv4. So I can just let's just copy this, change this to hashtag, change this to hashtag, and bdiv2, change this, and then just replicate this for the other 2 divs. So we need bdiv3, change the background color, and bdiv4, oops, yeah, there it is, and change the background color to anything. Now if we reload our screen, you guys can see that we have 4 different divs, and all we have to do now is actually add the buttons to all of them. So we can go ahead and do that. So to do that, I need to create buttons in each div. So how many buttons do we need? 1, 2, 3, 4 per div. First of all, we're going to be using flex for these as well, so we can do that. So we have to give a display of flex to each. Display flex, and we want the flex direction to actually be rows. And now let me just copy and paste this to all of the other divs. There we have it. Now let me add the button to like the first div just to test it out. So I want 4 buttons. There we go. So I'm going to be using different classes. I'll make one class called white button, one class called green, and one called red. So let me make a class. The first 3 are white. So W button. W stands for white. W button. W button. Then the last one is greenish. So I'll say G button. And now let me go ahead and actually style these classes. Dot W button. Oops. And dot G button. So the first thing I want is to give it like a flex of 1, and I want to give it like a margin left of maybe just 10 pixels for now. So let me just copy and paste this to the G button. Let's see what we get. So if I reload my screen, you guys can see that we have 4 buttons here. I think it looks pretty good. So let me just change. I think it's a bit too high, honestly. I think the whole like setup is a bit too big and wide, so I can change that. So to do that, let me go to my blue outline, reduce the height a bit. That's too little. Maybe 650. Think that's good. Reduce the width, maybe 700. I think that looks much better. So now I have to go to my input, reduce everything. I'll just make the height like 30%. It's a bit too less, maybe 50%. Think that looks pretty good. Maybe change the width to about 80%. That's good. And then make a margin left to 10%, so it's right in the middle. That looks good. Let me actually decrease the top. I don't really need it to be that big, honestly. That looks good. Now let's go ahead and style our buttons. I can actually decrease the height of the whole thing a bit more. It's a bit too big, honestly. Okay, that looks good. So now let me go ahead and give the buttons their values. So this is 1, 2, 3. The last one is plus, if I'm not wrong. So I'll just give it a value of plus. If I reload my screen, there we have it. Let me just go ahead and like increase the font size for all of them. So font size is maybe 20 pixels. That looks pretty good. Can I make it a bit more? Yep, I think that looks good. Make it for this too. And now let me change the background color of the green button. So I want it to be like an RGB color. That is green. Maybe that. I think that is fine. That we want it to be light green, like neonish. So maybe like somewhere there. And now let's go ahead and change like the the borders. Excuse me, the borders. So we want the border color to just be black. I think that looks good, and we do the same for here. Border color is black. Okay, and now if we remove the background of the first bottom div, and just remove it. Reload our screen, and we remove the background of the entire bottom div. I think this looks pretty nice. Let's change the cursor. Whenever we hover, so we know it's a button. So cursor, make it pointer. Same with here, cursor and pointer. So now if I hover, you guys can see that my cursor becomes pointed. So all we need to do now really is just replicate this to our other divs. So we can simply do that. So let's just copy this, paste it here. Oops, I think I missed something. Paste it here. And what do we want the values to be? We want it to be 4, 5, 6 and a minus. So 4, 5, 6 and a minus. So if I reload my screen, I think that looks pretty good. I think we should add a bit more space actually. So let's go ahead and like change the styling. So let's say margin top is maybe 10 pixels. If I just copy and paste this to each, I think that looks a bit better. Now let me go ahead and change the background of the bottom div too, since we don't really need it anymore. If I reload it, that looks pretty good too. Now we have to incorporate it for our third row. So let's do the same. Let's copy this. Let's just paste it right here. And let's change this to like 7, 8, 9. And what do we want for it to happen? We want there to be a multiplication symbol. So let's do that. Now if I reload my screen, we have this. And let's incorporate the last row as well. So what we want is we want a C, a 0 equals and slash. So let me make this a button. Let me write C, a 0 equals and a slash. So I want the slash to be a green button. I want this. So I need to change the C button to red. So I can just say R button and I can make a new class. And all I have to really do is I can just copy this and just change the background color to like a reddish color. Maybe that looks good. If I reload it, there we have it. Now I can remove the background from both of the bottom divs. So let me do that. Remove it from bottom div 3. You don't need that anymore. And from bottom div 4. Don't need that. If I reload my screen, so now what we basically have is that actually we don't really need a border. They don't have a border either. So what I can do for that is that I can just change the border to the background color. So I can say copy this, make that the border color. So do that for each of the different button classes. There we have it. Change this to white. So I think that looks a bit nicer. Now what we have to do is that we actually, so whenever I click this 1, it should appear in this input box. Whenever I click a 2, it should appear in the input box. So to do that, we obviously need to incorporate JavaScript. So we need to add functions to each of the buttons. So on the click of this function, what I basically want is that I want to add something to the value of this input. So let's go ahead and do that. So I need to add an onClick function to all of my buttons. So to do that, I can say onClick. And I can say add val. Now I won't be doing this for my C button or my equals button, since whenever I want to click either of the two, I don't actually want to display that onto my input box. I just want to evaluate something. So for now, I will just be applying it to all of the normal buttons. So I will copy this, and I have to paste it to my normal buttons. So I can just do that. Oops, I missed an O. Yeah, so I can just copy this and paste it to all of the buttons except the C button and the equal button. And now I need to create this add val function. So let me go to my JavaScript. Let me create it, add val. And now what I want is that whenever these buttons are clicked, this value should show up here. So to do that, I need to first get my input value. So I can use document.getElement by ID. Document.getElement by ID. INP. Dot value plus equals. So what I want to do now is that if I have to add different values, I actually need to pass in the value here. So I can just pass in 1, 2, 3, plus 4, 5, 6, a minus 7, 8, 9, multiplication symbol, 0, and divided by. And now I basically have an argument here. So this is the value I want to show, and then I can say plus equals val. Why do I have errors here? Add val. I need to do that. I think. Sec. Add val. If I save it and run it, so that we can see these buttons show up. What is wrong with my 6 button? Oops, I have added one more statement for some reason. I need to remove this extra tag that just showed up for some reason. Not sure why. Delete that. Go ahead and delete this as well. Delete this. So we have this normal button. If I reload it, my 7, 8, 9 buttons have this extra thing. Move that, remove that, remove that. What is wrong with my 0 button? Has this extra thing. Move that. So I think that looks good. Now slash. I can just pass them as strings actually. I think that would be easier for all. So just pass it in as like a string. It really shouldn't make a difference. So pass it in as a string, just put quotation marks around it, and that should make it a string. Oops. Nope. I want to pass. Okay, so why do I have this here? Don't need that. Oh, I do need that actually. Don't see what's wrong with the 7 here. Add val, passes in. Don't need that. I have an extra there. Okay, so now we don't have any errors. So if I reload my screen, I click on the 8, shows up here 4, 1, 0. So if I click on anything except for, oops, what is this? Oh, I've added a slash there. Okay, so if I click on anything right now, it shows up except for the equal sign and the C, because I don't want them to show up. So now what I want is that whenever the C symbol gets clicked, everything should disappear. So I need to make a new function for that. So I basically need to go to my C button right here, say on click, and say remove. I just want everything to be removed. So I can make a new function remove. I can say I can copy this, and I can just empty the entire value of the input. So value is equal to just that. So if I reload my screen, I add a bunch of things here. I click the C button. You guys can see that it's gone. Now what I want to do is that whenever I click the equals button, whatever is inside it should be evaluated. So there's a special function in JavaScript which I will show you guys. So let me actually make a function first of all. So on click is equal to evaluate, and now I can run it. I need to create it. So function evaluate. So what I want is that whenever that gets clicked, whatever is inside of the input should be evaluated, and that is what should be displayed. So I want this value to be equal to eval. That is a function in JavaScript which basically takes in a string and evaluates it as if it were not a string. So if that string has 5 plus 4, the result of eval would just be 9. So it works out perfectly. So I wanted to eval the current value. That's what's inside, so I can just paste this here. So if I run this, hopefully that works. So if I write 125 divided by 5, I should get 25. Oops, that does not work. Evaluate and evaluate. Have I spelled it correctly? Evaluate and evaluate. So what is wrong? On click document.getInput value is equal to eval. Am I missing something? I want whatever is inside of this to be evaluated. Dot value. I'm not sure why it's not working. 255 or 2 divided by 9. Nope. If I click that, that works. That works. Let's figure this out. So on click is equal to evaluate. Is evaluate already a function? Let me just make it like evaluate this. Evaluate this. Evaluate this. Evaluate this. Function evaluate this. Document ID INP dot value is equal to eval document ID INP dot value. I generally think this should work. I'm not sure why. Right, so that works. If I do 255 divided by 5, that also works. So I think the problem was just that the evaluate keyword was already a JavaScript function, and I think it gave me an error because of that. So whenever you make functions that you know should work but don't work, maybe just change the name of the function, as it might be a reserved function in JavaScript. So this brings us to the end of this tutorial. As you guys can see, if I just type anything here, times like 99, like divided by 88. Do that. So the entire calculator works. And this brings me to the end of this tutorial. If you guys enjoyed, please like, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Please let me know if you have any feedback for me in the comments. I will certainly have a look at it. And thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Thank you.